No hate, no hype, no fear. We are EFR, your protection from deception.
It's maddening how often the powers that be ruin Miracle Day, crisscrossing ocean skies in maze of garbled line. Unmarked craft streak delivery of toxic streams, tic-tacking pattern always seemingly prior to advancing rain. What excuse can they justify the monetary cost of targeting metropolitan cities and dwarfing them in canopy of chemical haze? What purpose are they serving when one considers phenomena worldwide menace? Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed. And I thank you for taking the time to join Cathy and I as we go down the rabbit hole, investigating all things esoteric, trying to help you to decipher the illusion parading as reality. Today I've got some really interesting information from a long lost book. This will be kind of a follow-up on the show and the series that I've been doing on Paradise, the Throne of God, and the connections of the North Pole and surrounding area and region to what is the cradle of humanity. And so we'll go into some of that. But first, Cathy is going to be joining me here in the early segments to talk about some flat earth news and some interesting stories that she's located and the ongoing research of this as topic. Cathy, are you there, sister?
Yes, I am. Hi to everybody. Hi, Zen.
Hello, and I hope everything worked out well with your move and that you got settled in and that you were happy. And
well, the best part of that was it didn't happen, and that we were saved by my son, and so we did not move. Thank God.
Right on. Well, I'm just glad everything worked out for you and that things are good.
Yeah, thank you. This week there has been a lot. There always is. It's just a growing, vastly fast-growing community in Flat Earth. And I wanted to share something. I don't think you've heard about this one yet, Zen. It's a new page that is a Drudge Report style layout even, but it's videos and articles in a place that you can go to find information to share or to learn yourself. It's called flatearthbible.com, and they have section videos and more on NASA. They have flat earth videos, Christian flat earth videos. And at the very beginning, it says new to flat earth, start here. So that's something you might want to check out.
And you said that's flatearthbible.com?
Yes, that's the name of it. And I've just started looking, but it's fascinating. It's going to be a great place to send friends to and to take a look at yourself. He's also got a list of some of the most popular YouTube channels. So for people who are new, and that's what I was saying, there's just so much that's going on. In the beginning, I'd go to Rob's channel and I'd look at your stuff. I got your book and I was so excited to be reading that. But you could type into YouTube and filter for a day the term flat earth, and you'd find a lot of really great stuff. Now it's just overwhelming. And I try and be a resource. I send out an email, and what I'm talking about today, most of it I sent out earlier today. If anybody wants the information we talk about here or would like to be on that list regularly, please email me at paralandra77@gmail.com. That's P as in Paul, ERELANDRA77@gmail.com. One of the videos I sent out, it's from a new channel for me. This is Tori. He's in Canada, and his channel is called Flat Earth Hub. And He also has a website of the same name. This one is called NASA is Busted, and you can search that, Flat Earth NASA is Busted. It's fascinating. There's some very good footage from NASA. This is the Apollo 17 mission from 1972. That was the last moon mission where they landed on the moon. And that footage has a shot of the lunar module lifting off. I didn't know that they had that capability to, maybe it's that camera they left on the moon that is taking that. But it also shows a very odd frame of a shadow from the lunar module on the moon, which I'm not sure how that would have worked. And another thing that I had never seen before was a spacewalk that occurred on that flight as it was returning. So I don't remember seeing that, but it was all there. And there was some overheard "it's fake" comments in Houston. I guess it was Houston. So he got some very interesting things in that video.
Very cool.
There's another NASA video. This is from Mediocre Monday. That's the name of the channel. Very good one. There's some past videos you might like. But this is 60 years of faking space. It's a very nice compilation. On another subject that I wanted to bring to your attention, we discussed it on our roundtable last Tuesday on our show, The Time Is Now, but it was about the Hebrew meaning of the word NASA.
Right.
And that was the Strong's 5377 to deceive. Some others have pointed out that the word NASA, and it's pronounced NASA, is Strong's 5375, and it has a meaning of to lift up. And Rob Skiba did a really nice article analyzing both of those terms and looking more in depth at NASA. And his article can be found at robschannel.com, and it's NASA-in-Hebrew. But I don't know, did you get a chance to look at that article, Zen?
No, I have not. And I actually did not even know that he had released that particular article. But just really quick, as far as the commentary on flatearthbible.com, I pulled it up, and it's fascinating. The guy did a really good job. So I look forward to, perusing through some of this information because, I don't, because I'm so busy with all my own material, I don't have a lot of time to look at a lot of other people's work. And so that's why I'm so very grateful for your collaboration and working with me and doing, making me aware of these other things, and also in, sharing the information with everybody else. So I'm very grateful to you for that, and keeping me in the loop with a lot of this other research. And so for that, much gratitude.
It can be overwhelming. I ran into him because there was a comment from Dave Weiss, Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. I don't even remember which video it was. I think it was on Tori's video, Bible Hub. And I asked, and I left a link, if they had seen the European Space Agency video of the lunar eclipse from just a couple weeks ago, where the moon had bounced around and, done a spin around the sun. It was really freaky. It did not look normal at all. And so he commented back to me that he was going to use that and really appreciate it. And I just wanted to mention that because it's nice to see the collaboration even in something like that in the comments. And I really did want to bring him out here. He's also on our list. And so, I look for suggestions from people, anything that we can do. I've got several blogs that I follow that are very in-depth research. I mean, there's so much information. A lot of it is kind of regurgitation of some of Eric Dubé's stuff, but it's really good. It's just kind of building a crescendo of the flat Earth meme. But back to Rob's article real quick, I think you would have really appreciated this. The Strong's 5375 it first appears in Genesis 4:13, which is, and Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. And bear was the 5375. Rob finished that article. This is really great. I just want to read this. What's the point in bringing all of this up? The NASA to deceive and all that. Well, going back to the original meme that caught my attention, and given the fact that NASA has proven time and time again to be obsessed with the occult, Freemasonry, and other esoteric disciplines, and that they are being exposed more and more for the frauds they really are, I don't think it is just a coincidence that their acronym, NASA, just so happens to have a very interesting connection to one Hebrew word which, regardless of how it is pronounced, has the same numerical weight, and he's referring to gematria, as man and earth, and can have the meanings of to be lifted up and to greatly deceive. Man being lifted off the earth to greatly deceive, that's a great connection. Along the same lines, looking at the letter meanings in the chart above in his article, the Nun Shin Aleph can represent something like the activity of destroying God. And he finishes, this seems to be the sole purpose of NASA. Mm-hmm. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah, and for those that did not catch the show that we did, you can find it on blogtalkradio.com under Bro Ken, BRO space KEN, which is our brother Kenneth Beer's radio talk show, and where we do the round tables. Every other Tuesday, it seems that the schedule that we've settled down to. But in that show, I made a comment about how, that there's no real coincidences in that. It was my opinion that NASA picked that name and fixed the National Aeronautics, even forget what the National Aeronautics Space Administration, to fit that, and the reason being is because of what Rob was talking about, to lift up and also to deceive, to beguile, and destroy God, and how all of those things fit in with their agenda and the alignment of what they are actually doing. And so certainly the Shum seems to fit all of those particular aspects of those particular words. And so, yeah, fascinating. And I do recommend people check out the ongoing series, because we're 5 shows into it now.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. When we covered the first one was about Antarctica, and you go back to no coincidences. NASA was started very shortly after Admiral Byrd was in Antarctica, and then was talking about what he had found there. And you've discussed this a lot about, is it hollow earth, or is there something more? I mean, a lot of people suggest that he found the edge, or I don't know, the barrier, the wall, the edge, who knows what he found. But NASA, and then, begins Operation Fishbowl and shooting off nukes, if there were nukes, to find the firmament, perhaps. I mean, there's a lot of speculation. But there's another video that Rob has done in the last week, and it's kind of I wasn't able to watch all of it, but I recommend it, and I'm trying to get back to it myself. It's about the Flat Earth map, the AE map. How do you say that? azimuthal equidistant.
equidistant
The
projection
stuff
map.
we learned is
Yeah.
amazing.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, the Gleason standard map. Anyway, he's talking about the southern flights, and so this, ties in with Antarctica too. So I highly recommend that. That's on Rob's channel, Rob Skiba. Did you get a chance to watch that one?
Yeah, I actually
You did.
And I do follow. Rob is one of the people that I try to keep up with some of his work. Um,
Yeah.
I don't follow a lot of people at all, and I don't listen to a lot of other people's work at all, just because I'm so engrossed in doing my own. And I'm
Yep.
actually now working on a book. Well, three. One, the Thracian Chronicles, and a book on the follow-up on Lucifer, Father of Cain, number 2, and also now working on a follow-up to the Flat Earth as key to decrypt the Book of Enoch, but it will focus on the firmament and the dome, and
Nice.
yeah, and other material like with what I'm talking about, the throne of God and the three heavens, and what's really located in up near the North Polar region, which is what we'll be going into later on today as well with the Inventio Fortunata, which is the text that I'll be covering after we do our discussion. But yeah, it's fascinating how much material is coming out, and in that book, the first book on the flat Earth as key to decrypt the Book of Enoch, which is my 9th book, I didn't speak a whole lot about the firmament, just because there's not a lot about it mentioned in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries. There is a portion of the Book of Enoch in the parable of the like all the animals, the dream vision, where there's a portion that talks about the firmament, but there's not a lot of elaboration. But there is a lot of material as far as the scriptures and extra canonical texts which allude to the firmament, and so I'm tying all of that together with some of this information on paradise and the throne of God and the three heavens, and so I'm working on that as well to release that hopefully soon. I can't make any promises because of all I'm doing, and so I don't know when I'll be able to get it out, but I am working diligently on that.
There's two things that you just reminded me of. Did you see Flatwater had a video out? He just started putting videos out again, but yesterday, I believe, on the Thracian Chronicles.
No, but I've been trying to talk to Brother Glenn. He lives up in Canada, because I want him to join us periodically, because he has such incredible information.
Insights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just really good information. And we talk a lot over, like text and email, but we're not able to contact, by Skype or phone. And so I am trying to get him locked down to, as far as a particular date to come on with us, and also wanting him to do that periodically, because he does have really incredible research and information and is very prolific in his work in this area. And so
his videos are like rich testimonials, or like a sitting down with a novel or watching a movie.
Right.
I mean, they're fascinating. The one that you told me about, I think something Olaf.
Olaf Hansen on the Smoky God.
Smoky God, that's it.
Yeah.
He did a video on that. It was fascinating. I loved it. I was trying to get people to watch it, and it's really hard to, people are turned off by the flat earth anyway, but I wish they would take the time. It's a fascinating story, and the detail he goes to, the images he finds in his videos, they're fascinating. But his channel is just called Flatwater, isn't that correct?
Right, Flatwater, and he's got a Flatwater backup channel as well. But yeah, the information on the Smoky God, it's also available in book form, and if people have not read it, it's about a fisherman who had made a journey with his father to the North Polar regions. And they talk about actually making it in to where it has to be the North Pole, and also being drawn in following one of these indwelling seas into the interior of the earth, and they're meeting a group of gigantic people, and talks about spending 2 years with them. They spoke a form of very ancient Sanskrit, which is Paleo-Hebrew, which in the Book of Jubilees, it talks that the language of paradise, Paleo-Hebrew. And so it's a fascinating subject, incredible story, and it aligns with a lot of the other, like in my research and looking into even the Mercator, the show that we did on
Oh, right.
the Mercator letter to John Dee, and what we'll be talking about today about what's actually up there at the North Pole. But you had mentioned that he was saying something about the Thracian Chronicles.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
what was
didn't
that?
get to, well, I will send that to you. I didn't get to watch it myself. It's just,
Okay.
mental note. In the beginning I was watching everything, but now I can just kind of, make a note and save it to email out to everyone and maybe share it. That's about it. It's very frustrating. And then there are even more. If you go into some of the groups that are worth looking at, or a few of the individuals on Facebook, you can find some fascinating information in some channels. There's a guy that I really enjoy. The name of his channel is Geo Shifter. I think he's in the UK. He has started, and I left a comment. I hope this is the first of a series. It says Space News Episode 1, and it is tongue in cheek, but it's off of a NASA article, or just a regular news article about something NASA did. Well, there's so many of them these days. They're just pumping them out.
Right.
And I laugh when I look at them. I mean, the pictures, it's graphics, it's it's cartoons, and some of the things are so fantastic that they say. It's like on the last show we did, The Time Is Now, last Tuesday, I was laughing all the way through an article I was sharing that this is what they're telling us is happening with the firmament, or not the firmament, the sharp boundaries, and the way that they're reporting them is straight news story. It's really comical. Anyway, he started with this video, and it's a NASA article about Saturn and its beautiful moons. He said, we take a closer look at the high resolution picture of one of the moons called Tethys. And what he says, and he shows this, what's funny about this picture is that the planet has a yellow side and a gray side. It's not like our moon that has no color at all. And there are 62 moons that they say Saturn has, but you can only see in this picture one moon. And so he speculates, it's really confusing. Either all those other 61 moons are hiding on the other side, or they're really, really tiny.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of fun. You got to have some humor in this,
Right, yeah.
But I did enjoy that a lot.
Yeah, and it reminds me, like, that just a few days ago or sometime this week, NASA had released, I believe, some really high definition photos of one of the moons, Ceres.
Pluto, yeah,
Yeah, and how they were talking about, they have these high definition, high resolution photos of this moon, but yet they're not providing the same thing of the Earth, and
correct, yeah,
right, and all of
absolutely.
its glory, and why we don't have a 24-hour live cam. It's several of them, from some of these satellites that are supposedly up there, and why people aren't able to just click on, some of these live feeds and watch the Earth in all of its glory 24/7 year round. I mean, if they have this so-called technology up there, then this should be the least that they should do to support, garnering the wealth of money that they receive from public funding.
I think that's why Matt Boylan really captures people's imagination, because he shows, a picture or a painting, and the way that they will show with it, supposedly it's a composite or a picture, they're too exact, too much of a circle. It looks much more believable the way that he'll show it, that, just take, a circle and hold it over a t-shirt or something, anything, like Patricia Steer had posted, it looked more like a button on her vintage coat than actually the moon off of Pluto. So I think that that's one reason people really are attracted to what Matt Boylan has had to say.
Yeah, I agree. And also the reason, with the lack of high resolution, high definition photos and video of the Earth, that is also one of the reasons why I began to doubt a lot of their assertions. And then, in learning about the Van Allen radiation belts, well, we'll pick it up on the other side. We'll be right back, everyone. All right. Welcome back, everybody. And so I did want to talk just about a couple other things in connection to NASA, specifically, with the astronauts making it to the moon and the different Apollo missions and their, the different flights where they were landed on the moon, and then the different space rocks, and how some of these space rocks that were sent to different museums have been now found out to be petrified wood, and then them conveniently losing, because this was supposed to be the most historical and most monumental event of human history in their being able to achieve making it to the moon back then, as a fulfillment of John F. Kennedy's promise to achieve that as far as the United States of America. And then now we learned that with the Orion and the supposed Mars missions that they are planning for and strategizing for, that they're not able to get beyond the borders of the radiation, these Van Allen radiation belts, the three that are out there, for fear of the astronauts being fried to death, and that it would take, 4 feet of lead surrounding the astronauts in order to protect them in going through, and yet supposedly they achieved this thing and have went through it back and forth on the way to the moon, and yet nothing ever occurred or happened. I believe Alan Bean had stated in the follow-up to A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, Astronauts Gone Wild, that he never even felt in if they did go through the Van Allen radiation belts, that that they never felt anything, and there was nothing weird about that. And then a different one, I'm not sure who it was, had mentioned that they saw, light flashes when they had their eyes closed or whatever. But all of that, is very telling, just in the way that in the whole documentary Astronauts Gone Wild, the reactions of all the astronauts in being asked by Barry to put their hand on the Bible and state, swear that they had went to the moon, and the fact that they get so angry, they want to punch him in his face. Some of them do. They throw him out, and just very weird reactions. And if they were being truthful about their testimony and about their assertion in achieving and actually accomplishing having gone to the moon, you would think that they would want to be boastful and, give as many interviews to people as would want to ask about that, and in celebrating it as a grand historical achievement. But because of their reactions and the fact that Neil Armstrong never even gave another interview about that after the initial press conference. And when they did have that initial press conference, how he, his eyes were down. He didn't even want to look out at the audience and didn't say very much at all. To me, that is all, like a psychologist in reading body language. Because you can tell when people are being truthful just by the way that they act and react to questions. And so all of that to me is very telling as to whether we actually did, because it's my assertion that we are not able to even now go beyond the firmament and, to landing on the moon or even though, the moon is within the firmament, that we're not able to land on other planets, or the moon, because they're not terraformed like we think they are, and certainly can't go beyond the Van Allen radiation belts. Cathy?
Yeah, from the first that I began to look into NASA, and it started off with listening to his name's Bart Sibrel on Canary Cry radio show, Gons, Shimura, and Basil. And that's been less than 12 months. There has not been a thing that I haven't researched either surface or deeply about NASA that has had anything to recommend it, or, any truth that I could detect in it that would make me pause and think, well, maybe I'm off on something wrong. Maybe this isn't right. To me, there should be something, but
right.
it stacks up, and the thing is, I don't have time to go deeply on things. I have on some, especially on the Planet 9, when they put that out as a meme. I really believe that, like I think David Weiss had said that they're just feeding that out to us. And we do. We grab onto it. We want it to be true. And then people are putting up videos saying, look, there's a second sun. And they're not. They're false. And I used to put those out there and say, look, I think this is probably true. But we took NASA at face value. There's comets going to go by. There's, comet Ison. There's, a sun diving comet. Oh, look, it came out the other side. None of this stuff is true. Right. If you start to dig in on it yourself, you don't come up with anything that's true. And then what do? Last July, they come out with the first follow-up blue marble since 1972. That doesn't make any sense. We should have,
yes.
Many people have said it, we should have more images than you could count. We just never ask these questions. And now that I'm asking the question, I don't see anything truthful from an organization that has so much money at its disposal, either directly or indirectly, and we are being deceived.
Yes.
It's military. They are a part of the military. They were founded in deception. And when you look at what is taught in the classroom, and just from the simple globe to the miseducation in America, look up Charlotte Iserbeet. I got on her case again this week looking at her, but there's a video you can find out there. It's a little over an hour long. She was in the Reagan administration, assistant education secretary, and she knew what was going on. But that is what we live with today. It is not true. It is deceit. And we know where that deception comes from. It comes from the father of lies. And we should be expecting that rather than being surprised that this is where our world is today. Mm. It's trying to figure out for me the absolute breadth of it. How far does it go? Who do I trust? Someone commented on a post I did. Oh, it was the one about now they can real time affect in a video the facial expressions. You can control the facial expression. So who is real and who isn't? And somebody commented, "Am I really here?"
Right.
what's going on. But this stuff is coming out all over the place. The new virtual reality sets that you wear, okay, and look through, those are coming out now. And one of the videos that I looked at that was showing what you'll be able to do with it, the very first thing they show is a globe. So, I mean, it's the indoctrination brigade continues.
Right. Yeah, I saw that too, and it's mind blowing how much manipulation and how much deception they are able to achieve with technology. And for those that buy into and trust government and trust NASA and trust scientists, I mean, they are going to be just bought and sold into everything that, everything they're going to buy into all of their lives, and everything that they're going to believe is all just going to be fabrication. And it's just so mind blowing, the scale, the breadth of how wide and how grand the deception is. And just like as what we were talking about, even with NASA, okay, if NASA is doing this, then you have all of these other space agencies now.
Right.
And then the supposed International Space Station and all of these different, different astronauts from different countries taking place. Well, then it's difficult for people to grasp and to wrap their mind around that all of these countries and all of these agencies and all of these people would be in on it and would be working in tangent to deceive us. And yet this is exactly the kind of thing that the Freemasons do with the different secret societies and these different New World Order groups that work in tangent to formulate and push world government, the creation of central banks. Even here in America, we have the Federal Reserve System, and so very few people even know that it's a corporation, privately owned, and I mean, it's just mind blowing. Even like in the show that we did a couple of weeks back, and talking about the Titanic and how the insurance fraud and its connections to the central bank, and people didn't even weren't able to wrap their mind around that and how deep that particular deception was. And God, this one is just so huge, so massive, and it's difficult for people because of its scale to accept as being a lie. Which I forget who it was, but they said that it was easier to perpetuate a grand lie than even that of something small.
Yeah, I was Stalin or Hitler, one of those that said that. The bigger the lie. Yeah, absolutely. I think we have the benefit of understanding some of these other things, the Masons, Illuminati, MK Ultra. I mean, things that you can point to. They had hearings about MK Ultra. That was an admitted program, but people still won't believe that. And of course, that has continued. Exactly how, we don't know, but at least you and I have the benefit of having investigated many of these things already, right, and having gone through whatever trauma we did. I mean, like when we learned about 9/11, I was a real latecomer to that. I just got Dr. Wood's book and I'm really reading through that now. But the vastness of it, the compartmentalization, I can understand these things. And, it's not that I'm gullible. I'm a smart woman. I can understand, I can reason these things. And I'm just amazed that I'm not finding more truth. I mean, when NASA put out that image, or a GIF, I guess it was, of the Earth being passed by with the moon from their Discover satellite 1,000,000 miles away. That's the most ridiculous thing. But people, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people are on the NASA Twitter feed and they're, hand high five clapping. Oh, look what we did. And the moon is just like on a joyride going past the Earth. They don't even see that. And it's right in front of their eyes.
Right. And then what you were talking about with 9/11, there was recently a video put out by John Dee, and he was talking about how there were no planes involved in the actual attacks of that day. And this is an aspect of the 9/11 research that even for hardcore 9/11 researchers, it was difficult and it was a stretch to actually begin to investigate this aspect of the conspiracy, because like Flat Earth, they think that if you believe that there were no planes involved in the attacks of that day, well, that makes you look like an idiot. But when you actually do investigate, like the live feed that was taken from the helicopter that was filming live, and saw and filmed the second attack and how there was actually no plane. Well, when you can finally wrap your mind around that there were no planes involved, well, then how is it that all of the news stations and all of the media outlets had in advance all of the videos that showed planes on the hitting the Second World Trade Center? And if indeed there were no planes involved, as the live feed shows from that film that was taken from the helicopter that was actually up there in the air near World Trade Center, the second one that was hit, that shows what seems to be a missile, or you couldn't even see it until it hit the actual tower and went through to the other side. Well, that means that all of the Fox News and CNN and all of them had to have been given scripted and productions that had actual planes already built into and showing the attacks previous, or at least closely thereafter, the attacks that, all that was done rapidly in order to insert the planes. And so that means they too had to have been part of the conspiracy. And then, that in of itself is another, it's absolutely mind blowing. And it's just, for some, it's too much, but
I've been going back more on and viewing 9/11 videos through Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. It's Deep Inside the DITRH, his channel. Mm-hmm. And he has some very good short, he started making real short ones, but there's some very good ones there. He also has Exposing the Big Three. He has those 2 pages on Facebook too. But, they've been planning for a very long time, and there's a lot of people involved, and we ignore it at our peril. And I mean, it's all back to the Bible. It's understanding the powers of darkness against the creator of everything, right, and understanding what you've brought forward. I mean, I never understood the entirety of it all until I read your books. I mean, in a way that pulled it all together and made sense and was just a marvel to me. I mean, it just opened my eyes in a new and exciting way. And I love investigating this stuff and being able to see and discern. I mean, it freaks you out that it's going on. It's really going on right now. And I mean, I still watched Fox. I mean, I turned it on with no sound now. I can't stand it, just in case something comes across. But I used to watch it, I mean, even a year ago, but now I can't stand it. The Belgium thing. I mean, this one guy, he's in the hospital now. He's got his head all wrapped. He's a Mormon. His name's Mason Wells, I think. But he was at the Boston bombing. He was at the Paris attack. And here he is in Brussels, and he made it out alive.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. And there's several of those people, and they think they, um, they basically report on what are the odds, and then to survive, all these different attacks, and they're being in the right place at the right or the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's all just yeah, right. And so. Yeah, it's almost too much, and yeah. Well, I appreciate you saying that about my work, because still, I'm not a lot of people or very few want to investigate all aspects of the research that I've done and trying to bring it to people to help them to unify all things in understanding what we are contending with and dealing with, and that really this is a war between the bloodlines and the seed lines, and that the New World Order is part of the sons of Cain, and if you don't understand what happened in the garden, you really can't understand what's going on right now. And even with how all of the presidents being blood related and linked to one another, that it's such a big part of the puzzle, that, in my opinion, unless you have and understand it as revelation, you just will not be able to understand scripture, and even why, all the patriarchs and prophets spoke about and kept detailed, as far as the bloodlines and who begat whom and who was born of whom, and why they elaborated on that in such great detail. But when you know about the two different bloodlines and the children of Cain, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and the enmity that would take place between them throughout all time and history until Yeshua returns again for the separation of the wheat and the tares, you just can't make sense of the underlying truth which unites all of these themes together, in my opinion.
I wonder why, like the flat earth people can be so closed to hearing that, or just even to listening to it, because that is something that does elicit the response that's borderline angry. Those that,
yeah.
yeah, they won't hear that, but it makes so much more sense. It really does. Because I still hear people not understanding why God would have the Israelites, murder,
Right.
everyone. And then here you have, well, this would make sense. Why? And it makes sense that the fallen angels have their hands into what's going on, what's being doled out in technology, or, how the world is being manipulated. That was something else I delved into this week was, financial collapse, and it actually back to 2008. And the Untouchables was a show I was watching, but nobody went to jail. None of the Wall Street bankers went to jail.
Right.
And these things are just routine. This is the world we live in. It's being manipulated. Obama is not in control of anything.
Right.
They are in control of him. And the same will be true with Trump or Hillary. It's just they're the face that we see.
Exactly.
For the chaos that we live. And it's very frustrating. And the money that's in NASA, and that's why they can do what they do. But, what they're putting out is really pretty shoddy.
Right, yeah. Especially for the money that they have.
Exactly.
The budgets, the technology. I mean, it's almost like they don't even care, they're whatever they're spending the money on, it's got to be a lot more important than, their work in trying to deceive us, because, it's so easy to debunk. Oh, which is, the whole point that I was making about the Apollo missions, and that being supposedly such historical precedence for humanity, was all of that information, all of that video, and all of that audio and everything has conveniently been lost and disappeared. Right. Which, with the technology that we have now, it would not have withstood the scrutiny that people are now giving to that material. And so, of course, they had to lose it conveniently.
Was that everything from just the first Apollo mission, or is it the entire program?
I believe it's all of the Apollo stuff, but I'm not, I know for certain it was the first Apollo mission.
It was a tremendous amount. All of the telemetry.
Right.
That movie, Capricorn 1, is perfect. If anybody hasn't seen that movie, you can rent it through Amazon or something like that. But it's perfect example of how they could have faked the moon mission. It was a mission to Mars. And one of the employees at NASA wasn't understanding how his telemetry readings showed they were just 100 yards away, or a few miles away. And eventually, this guy was offed. But that's the kind of thing. So all of those records in real life, they're gone.
Right. Yeah, how so very convenient. But that's a movie that is on my list to watch.
It was great. It was great.
I have not seen it yet, but yeah, that's one that I do want to watch. And I did watch that one that they were talking about with Ascension, which is basically that they sent this mission 50 years in advance up to that they're supposedly going to a different place to reestablish humanity, but it was all fake. They were actually in a giant warehouse and being monitored.
Right.
Yeah,
and they lived on that.
Well.
Yeah, they had been living on it for 50 years. Yeah, that was a sci-fi channel.
Yeah, that was a good one. All right, we'll be right back, and we'll be going into the Inventio Fortunata.
Thanks for having me on, Zen.
Thanks, sister. All right, welcome back, everybody. The text that we're going to be going into is called Inventio Fortunata, which in the show that I did on the Mercator Letter to John Dee, which I believe was episode 5, in talking about Hyperborea, Paradise, and the North Pole. This particular this book is mentioned in that particular text. And you cannot find a PDF or electronic copy of it, but you can purchase it from different people that have made it available in actual book form. And so it's only like 35 pages long, but it is speaking about Nicholas of Lynn. And it talks about his having possibly made it to the North Pole in his research and investigation as to that particular region. And there has been, for a very long time, ongoing efforts to make it to the North Pole and surrounding regions. And the reason being is because of the mythology of it being possibly the location for original Atlantis, and as well as a land called Hyperborea, and other mythologies like even Paradise, and also the Garden of Eden, being the cradle of humanity. And there was a book that I mentioned in that show, which also talked about a publication called, I believe it was The North Pole as Cradle for Humanity. And in it, forget the guy's name, William Mercer or something of that nature. But he wrote a very long and extensive book which took the investigations of all cultures and all peoples and put them together in side by side in parallel form to help those that were reading it to understand the connections of the mythology to that of even the biblical assertion that this area could have connection to, paradise and also to the Garden of Eden. And why I say paradise and the Garden of Eden is because paradise is actually affirmed as being on the third heaven where the throne of God is, and that the Garden of Eden is where we fell to when when Adam and Eve, being beguiled, were kicked out of paradise. They found themselves in in banished here to the earth, exiled here to the earth, and that this was located as area near and surrounding what would be the North Pole and Arctic regions. And so it's a fascinating topic to investigate and research, and I've been doing it now even since that particular show. And since I heard a video that Flatwater had put out where he read Mercator's description of that particular area. And the description was that there was a magnetic mountain, which is where, the North Pole is where all compasses point to, and that supposedly there's a magnetic mountain reference to Samuru and also to Olympus as the mountain of God, and that it's also my speculation that what is referenced as the Mount of the Congregation in Isaiah chapter 14, that this is a reference to that particular magnetic mountain as well. And that when Adam and Eve were exiled, it says that they were placed to the east, and that the Garden of Eden was located to the east of this magnetic mountain in this particular area, this region, and that surrounding the magnetic mountain is this whirlpool which draws in all of the oceans and the seas of the flat earth plane and draws them into what is called the great abyss, and that they flow downwards into Sheol and to the interior of the earth. And that this particular region is split by these four rivers, but that they are all pulled in to this central whirlpool. And so this particular book will give you further description and a follow-up to what I had read and referenced in that particular show on Paradise and Mercator's letter to John Dee. And so we should be able to cover it in an hour. If not, we'll do a follow-up next week. But I'm going to begin with page 22, I believe it is. And basically what I had to do was scan it to make it available in the way that I have it, and we'll be reading from it. So it says this: the earliest allusions to the Inventio Fortunata of Lynn is found upon the margin of a map by John Ruish, which appeared at Rome in the Ptolemy of 1508. On this map is a legend somewhat to the following effect. It is written in the book of the fortunate discovery that under the Arctic Pole there is a high magnetic rock, 33 German miles in circumference. This is surrounded by the fluid Suginum Sea, that as a vase pours out water by 4 miles from below. I have to clarify something here. Whereas in the Mercator letter to John Dee, it says that all of the rivers and the seas, that they are drawn in and that they flow downward into the great abyss. In this particular quote, it mentions that they rise up. And so in what I've learned in reading the fullness of this Inventio Fortunata is that it says that the seas and the whirlpool draws in twice a day, and it also, like a tide, it pushes up twice a day and it draws in twice a day. And that could be the reason why we see the tides, is because of this movement of the oceans in being drawn in and also being pushed out at different portions and times, which I thought was a very interesting. So it's much like a breath, the drawing in of the sea and the pushing out of the sea is much like almost like the earth breathing, and on the in breath pulling in all the oceans and rivers, and on the out breath pushing out, which I thought was interesting. All right, continuing. That as a vase pours out water by 4 mouths from below, around are islands of which 2 are inhabited. Mountains vast and wide surround these islands, 24 of which deny habitation to man. This would seem to indicate that the book written by Nicholas of Lynn was known to the mapmaker, while also it may have been known at Rome. It is evident that the polar regions was drawn more or less in accordance with some plan by Nicholas, which was combined with later material. Around the magnetic rock, immediately under the pole, are 4 islands: Arofio, Insula Deserta, Hyperborea Europea, and Insulavel Deserta. Outside of these islands are smaller and mountainous islands arranged in a semicircle, while the peninsula of Philippolentia, with its base resting upon Europe, pushes out into this druidic arrangement of islands, bearing up what is intended to represent a church with the legend Sancti Adolphi. Eastward of this peninsula is the Provincia Obscura and the Mare Sevignum. Westward of Bergi Extrema, another peninsula enters the group of islands, which is pierced by the Planura de Berga at the extreme west. The Mare Sevignum also fills the west, south of Grenvinland, which I is assuming is Greenland, is Terra Nova or Newfoundland. From the Mare Sevignum, the water flows northward through the 4 openings into the polar basin. The arrangement is curious, yet not wholly without resemblance to what is found in nature. For what is called the polar basin is fed by several vast streams pouring into it from the warm regions at the south. These streams also create countercurrents which flow southward. Bearing enormous quantities of the heaviest ice. Just know that in between I'm having to move up because, these are scans, very large scans, in order for me to be able to read from them. And so I'm often having to adjust the text in order to be able to read it. Nicholas of Lynn doubtless understood something of this fact, but it would appear from the use he made of Giraldus Cambrensis, who wrote in 1187 that unfortunately he gave the author of the Topographia Hibernica the credit of being better informed than himself. The monk of Lynn was clearly indebted to Giraldus for the description of the streams. In turn, Giraldus refers to the philosophers who describe them. Now, I have not looked up that particular text. The Topographia Hibernica, but I plan on doing that sometime very soon. All right, continuing. This basin or whirlpool at the north, with the four entering streams, appears to be a venerable institution, yet it may after all be founded upon what is observed today in connection with the Gulf Stream and the Kuro-Siro, and may be connected with the observation of such navigators as Pytheas, who went to the north. The magnetic rock under the pole on the map of Reusch, or rather, we may perhaps say of Nicholas, deserves attention, as it has been claimed that the monk had applied his mind to one of the most difficult of problems, and that the magnetic mountain stands for the solution thereof. I think I can actually skip just a little bit here. And I'll pick it up on the next page. Okay, right here. Okay, looking for the beginning of this sentence. It would have been a happy thing if the false notion of Nicholas of Lynn had not misled others. First, however, it must be indicated that the magnetic mountain of Lynn was borrowed from the early philosophers and geographers. Galen reports that the magnetic rocks on the coast of the Indian Ocean, and St. Ambrose echoes the idea, while the Arabic geographer Idrisi of the 12th century, author of a map of the world of the year 1154, reported a magnetic mountain at the mouth of the Red Sea, it being 12 miles long and surrounded by islands, acting upon the iron in ships and holding them fast. Now, I wanted to make another comment. There's one portion of the text which some are trying to debunk Nicholas of Lynn and his description of the North, and then there are others which support the evidence and his discoveries and what he asserts as being there. So you'll see this kind of debate occurring in the discussion of the Inventio Fortunata. But continuing. In Reusch's Ptolemy of 1508 is found a similar account, the island being in the possession of Anthropophagi, or Manoles. It is surrounded by 10 other islands. The magnetic attraction was so powerful there that it was necessary in building ships to use wooden nails. In these accounts, as in the map of Reusch, the magnetic island is in a circle of islands. The map of Reusch alone, in the authority for connecting Lynn's name with the magnetic mountain, the accounts preserved by Mercator and Dr. Dee do not mention the magnetic rock, the ships being driven by the currents of indraughts. Nicholas understood something of polar magnetism and supposed that it was to be explained by the aid of a magnetic mountain like that of Ptolemy, and accordingly created one. It was partially suggested as hypothetical of the extent of his actual knowledge in connection with polar magnetism. It is impossible to speak. Now, this is a portion where I was telling you that they are saying that Mercator and John Dee did not mention this magnetic mountain, but in fact, he absolutely mentions this magnetic mountain and gives description of it as being 33 French miles. And I would go back to the show that I did on the Mercator testimony, as well as the North Pole as being location of paradise, and also of this particular description, the magnetic mountain, and of the Garden of Eden, and the description of the four rivers surrounding. All right, I'm going to skip just a little bit further. Indeed, there is good reason for supposing that the map of Roy shows less knowledge of Greenland than Nicholas possessed, as the monk was a contemporary of the Zeni and the Bardisen, for it was during the lifetime of Lynn in 1340 that Ivar Bardson went from Norway to Greenland for the relief of the colonists there. Next, we pass to the map of Orontius Fine of the year 1331, which shows the influence of Nicholas as exerted by Ruysch, for there is no evidence at hand proving that Fine had seen the book called Inventio Fortunata. Fine's map represents the circumpolar region complete and retains the four inner islands shown by Ruysch. The outer circle of islands is broken, while Greenland, appears as an island widely separated from Asia. Iceland and the Orcades appear in their proper relative positions. Bacalar, which included Newfoundland and Labrador, being a part of Asia in accordance with the Columbian idea. The next trace of Nicholas, the monk of Lynn, is found in the work of Las Casas, written in 1552 and 61, where he speaks of floating islands. It refers to those of northern Italy, mentioned by Pliny, and where he also mentions the floating Puma stone described by Seneca. Passing from these cases, he mentions certain islands which swim on the water, saying of this kind must have been those which are called the St. Brendan, in whose history it is said, you may read of many islands that were seen in the sea surrounding the islands of Cape Verde and the Azores, which are always in a state of conflagration, and which must be similar to those spoken above, adding of the same mention in the book of Inventio Fortunata. Nicholas of Lynn also appears upon the map of Mercator in 1569, whereon the polar regions are delineated more or less in accordance with the conception of the famous monastic voyager, while the map shows the Mercator obtained his information through Sonoyan. I want to make real quick before I forget a description, something that Jaron of Jaronism had posted about a book called, I can't even remember the guy's name, Mundo something. I'll look it up over the break, but the map, it was a book of like a flat earth map, which showed this similar thing. And in the very center, this, what is called Rupes Negra, or the Black Rock, which is this magnetic mountain. And it showed the earth in the shape and form of a flat earth. A very interesting map. And that book sold for $600,000. And anyways, it was a very interesting text, and it was a very, it showed exactly the kind of things that we're talking about. All right, continuing. I'll read the side note about Mercator. It says, touching the description of the north parts, I have taken the name out of the voyage of Iamenes Sonoyan of Hartazan Busky, which allegedly, among the rest, he learned of a certain priest in the King of Norway's court in the year 1364. This priest was descended from them, which King Arthur had sent to inhabit those islands, and he reported that in the years 1360, a certain English friar, a Franciscan, and a mathematician of Oxford came into those islands, who, leaving them and passing further by his magical arts, described all those places that he saw, and took the height of them with his astrolabe, according to the form that I, Gerard Mercator, have set down in my map. And as I have taken it out of the aforesaid Sonoyan, he said that those 4 indraughts were drawn into as inward gulf or whirlpool, with so great a force that the ships which once entered therein could by no means be driven back against, and that there is never in those parts so much winds blowing as might be sufficient to drive a corn mill. This is from the Principal Navigations by Henoyklit, which the Mercator Letter to John Dee speaks about the same thing that this Inventio Fortunata talks about with, but his is the Inventio Fortunata is based on the discoveries and the voyage of Nicholas of Lynn. And Mercator's map and description is based upon this monk, this mathematician, this Franciscan monk, and that he, was part of those that were sent forth by King Arthur. And they both talk about and assert the same things, the same kind of testimony as far as the magnetic mountain and the 4 seas and what is described as the surrounding regions. Now, whether that's true or not, of course we won't know, but we'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. I did not find the name of that individual as far as the map that I was talking about with Jaron, but I will look for it again. I should have some time after reading the final portion of what I want to read from this particular testimony about Nicholas of Lynn and the other explorers that had went up to this particular area and that had mentioned the same kind of phenomena as being discovered there. Here's where I left off. Another reference to the subject is found in the life of Admiral heretofore generally attributed to Ferdinand Columbus. The text runs as follows. Juventius Fortunatus relates that there is an account of 2 islands towards the west and a little southward, that the island of Cape Verde, which skims along upon the water. Now, if we are correct, the writer here alludes to the Inventio Fortunata of Nicholas of Lynn, though the editor of the Life of the Admiral, whoever he may have been, makes the title of the book itself the name of the author. It is indeed possible that such a person as Juventius Fortunatus wrote on geographical subjects and hence was quoted, but the probabilities are against this view. At all events, no such work now exists in the Columbiana Library at Seville, where we should expect to find it, for the reason that the library in question is none other than the library of Ferdinand Columbus, the reputed author of the Life of the Admiral, nor does this library contain the Inventio Fortunata of Nicholas, which constitutes another argument, such as it is, To prove that Ferdinand did not write the book attributed to him, or at least that he did not compose the work in its present form, the catalog of the Columbina has been searched diligently for some indications of such work, but in vain. An inquiry has been made respecting the book of Conoyan, through which the author of the life of the admiral might have learned the story of Nicholas. This work, also wanting in the Columbianina catalog, it is nevertheless that Columbus made a careful examination of the Arctic quests in the course of his studies, that he might have seen the Inventio Fortunata. That he had examined the subject is evidence from his memoir or annotations upon the 5 zones, in which he sets forth the theory that found in the Imago Mundi, holding that the North was inhabitable and proving it out of his own experience in 1477. In 1589, Blundeville expressed an opinion derogatory to Lynn, holding that the voyage attributed to him could never have been performed without the aid of some cold devil. Now, this guy doubts that, Lynn ever, made this voyage, or that he found what he says. But continuing. And then I'm going to read a footnote which actually describes that particular region. We now pass to the celebrated Dr. John Dee, a large number of whose invaluable manuscripts were destroyed by a mob at Mortlake in 1583, who evidently knew the manuscript of Nicholas and Hakluyt in 1599. Gives an additional testimony from the astrologer. It runs as follows. Anno 1360, that is to wit, in the 34th year of the reign of the triumphant King Edward III, a friar of Oxford, being a good astronomer, went in company with others to the most northern islands of the world, and there leaving his company together, he traveled alone and purposely described at the northern islands with the indrawing seas and the record thereof. At his return he delivered to the King of England, the name of which book is Inventio Fortunata, qui liber incipite agra du 54 Vicfi Polum. I guess that's Latin. Which friar for sundry purposes after that did 5 several times pass from England thither and home again. So he made 5 voyages to this Arctic polar north region and back. And he was the one that had given description to not only the King of Norway as described in Mercator's letter to John Dee, but here to King Edward III, in talking about the polar regions. As late as 1659, the story of Nicholas of Lynn was echoed by geographers and cosmographers. Heylin wrote about the great rock at the pole and the 4 indraughts or Euripi, which swallowed up ships, and added the story of the pygmies mentioned on Mercator's map of 1542. Among the maps which give more or less exactly the ideas represented by Ruysch, that made in 1572 for Munster, copies of which are found in Bella Forest of 1575, Linscoven's map of 1595 faintly shows the Euripide. I guess the Euripide are the whirlpool. The Ortolins of 1599 also shows them faintly. The Mercator of Hondens, 1607, wants them, but the Facsimilus Geographicus of Matthew Quode in 1608 shows the Euripide fully, as does the Hondelins of 1619, in which there is an allusion to the fabulous Canoian. In 1625, Purchas copied the map of Honduras, who repeats to them current account of Lynn. Further, he says that Mercator was abused by a map sent unto him of 4 Euripide, meaning about the North Pole. Euripide, I guess that means rivers or the indrawing seas. I'm not too positive. In all these accounts, there is, however, nothing to impugn the general statements respecting the voyage of Nicholas into the far north. If correctly reported, he may have fancied that he knew all about the pole and that he had solved the problem of the magnetic by putting one of the old magnetic mountains in the north. If he was deceived, it may be said that he was not the first navigator who indulged imagination at the expense of truth. He is made to say that great tides drew ships into a fatal gulf. But if this is used to prove that he never saw the north, then the stories of the Norwegian sailors respecting the maelstrom, found until recently on many maps, would indicate that after all, they also never saw the sea. So the Norwegians also described, what Nicholas of Lynn described in his journeys northward. And so they seem to be confirming witness to one another. In the early times, what havoc could not the cosmographers have made of the statement of Davis, who saw the northern sea, falling down into the gulf with a mighty overfall. What is needed is the narrative of Nicholas, which he presented to Edward III. This may yet be drawn forth from some musty and forgotten collection. In closing, we may pause to inquire on how far north the ancient navigators penetrated. The Icelandic colonists in Greenland may have reached a very high latitude during the 300 years that they visited there, but the highest point indicated is that near Cape York in 72 degrees north. Upon an unpublished Spanish globe in the National Library at Paris of the date of about 1540 is an indication which possibly may prove that some navigator had pushed through Smith Sound and Robeson's Channel. Many unrecorded expeditions were doubtless made into the north, and this globe may contain the memorial of some French, Spanish, or Portuguese voyage not far from the year 1500. In 1500 and in 1501, expeditions went north under Contreal, who also went in 1502, but never to return. On the east coast of Greenland, so far as our knowledge goes, exploration was not carried high up. Though Columbus, in going 300 miles beyond Iceland, must have sailed close to the northern border of Greenland. If he had persevered, he would have had struck the New World in 1477. The early navigators appear to have pushed northward to the pack ice, but there is no indication of their having known either Jan Mayen or Franz Joseph's land, though they may have seen both. The map of the Zeno brothers, the result of the voyage of 1380, stood unequal down to 1558. No improvement in the cartography of Greenland being made until the voyage of John Davis in 1585. All right, I'm going to stop there and say that the voyage of Olaf Janssen, which is part of the Smoky God, that in that particular text, they speak about going past Franz Josef Land. And his father talks about having discovered a lot of ivory from the numerous woolly mammoths that had died there. And he says that so many were found on that island that the whole island itself could have been made of these ivory tusks, these mammoth tusks. And that was one of the reasons why Olaf Janssen's father took him northward, was to drop by Franz Josef Land and to pick up a whirlpool. I mean, not the whirlpool, but the woolly mammoth task, and to continue going north. And they decided to not stop, but to just continue going, to trust the Norse gods, who his father was a great believer in Odin and Thor, and to trust that they would make it to what was, a warm region. And in fact, the closer they got towards the North Pole, the more and warmer it got in the description of their travels northward. And then eventually they talk about being taken into the interior of the earth by one of these indwelling, indrawing rivers. I believe it was the Hilikel they describe. And that once they got into the interior, that's when they met with the giants that lived on the interior. And that the giants were actually very benevolent and very nice to them, and that they had high technology. And remember, this story is written in like the early 1800s, and there's description of, high technology such as magnetic trains, electricity, lights, and of a interior sun, a second sun, which they call the Smoky God, and that this sun was on the interior of the earth, but acted much like the sun, which is on the outside, in providing light and spurring growth and things of that nature. All right, I'm going to finish this account with one other footnote, and then I'll share commentary, and I'll see if I can find the name of that map so that you can look it up as to what I'm talking about. Because you can go to the actual website where this auction took place and look at the maps for yourself. All right, it says this. Under the Arctic Pole is said to be a black rock of wondrous height, about 33 leagues in compass. The land adjoining being torn by the sea into 4 great islands. For the ocean violently breaking through it and disgorging itself by 19 channels, maketh 4 Euripidae, Euripi, or fierce whirlpools. So Euripi is whirlpools. Maketh 4 Euripi, or fierce whirlpools, by which the waters are finally carried towards the north, and these swallowed into the bowels of the earth. That Euripius, or whirlpool, which is made by the Scythic Ocean, has 5 inlets, and by reason of his straight passages and violent course is never frozen. The other of the back of Greenland, being 37 leagues long, hath 3 inlets, and remaineth frozen 3 months yearly. Between these two lieth an island on the north of Lapia, Lappia, and Biarnia, inhabited, as they say, by pygmies, the tallest of them not above 4 feet high. A certain scholar of Oxford reporteth that these 4 Euripi are carried with such furious violence towards some gulf in which they are finally swallowed up, that no ship is able, with never so strong a gale, to stem the current, and yet there is never so strong a wind as to blow a windmill. This is from the Cosmography, edition 1659. So all these are, different accounts and taken from different maps and different discussions of what may possibly lie in the polar north. And so I just wanted to read from this account just to give you an idea as to what it says in connection to the same thing which is described in Mercator's letter to John Dee. Let me see if I can find that map for you real quick. I downloaded it, and so I might be able to locate it. If I can remember the guy's name. Give me just a minute to check and see if I can find this particular map. Because I believe I saved it under his name. And when you get to the website and you pull up the actual, the hard copy, the high density image, you can look at it for yourself. And it's a little rough, of course, because it was published in 1500 something. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I'll just check my history real quick and hopefully I can find it for you before we get to the end of the show. It was just yesterday that I was looking at it. And if not, what I'll do is I'll mention it in the show next week, because it was really interesting map to look at. And again, it's further confirmation, like many of the old maps, even with what Rob was talking about. These old maps give you an idea that indeed they believed in a flat earth. All right. Was it yesterday? Give me just 2 minutes and hopefully I can find this for you. I wish I remember that guy's name. No, that's not it. No, I apologize, people. I'm not able to locate it. And so, anyways, I'll try to find it and share it with you next week, and so you can look at it. It's really interesting as far as we have all of these maps: the azimuthal equidistant map, the Gleason map, which also Cathy and I were talking about the video that Rob Skiba did on the Southern flights. Well, he mentions, which I thought was really interesting, and it's something that I want to do. He mentions having downloaded an image, a very large image of the Gleason map. And I forget exactly where he was able to locate and download this image, but he said that he took it to a Office Max or an Office Depot, and he had them print up a large size copy of this map and to also laminate it, and it only cost him $18. Cathy, if you wouldn't mind, can you share in the chat room the link to that particular video so that people can listen to it? It was a really short, I think like 17 minutes long or something like that. But that would be a really interesting thing for people to do because if you put it on your wall, it would at least spur discussions. And it's a very cheap way to reproduce the map since they're being sold for very expensive on the internet. God bless all. Good night. We'll talk to you next week. Actually doing, and so certainly the shoe seems to fit all of those particular aspects of those particular words. And so, yeah, fascinating. And I do recommend people check out the ongoing series because we're 5 shows into it now.
I think
correct,
so. I think so. Yeah. Yeah. When we covered the first one was about Antarctica, and you go back to no coincidences. NASA was started very shortly after Admiral Byrd was in Antarctica and then was talking about what he had found there. And you've discussed this a lot about, is it hollow earth or is there something more? I mean, a lot of people suggest that he found the edge, or I don't know, the barrier, the wall, the edge, who knows what he found. But NASA, and then, begins Operation Fishbowl and shooting off nukes, if there were nukes, to find the firmament, perhaps. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, but there's another video that Rob has done in the last week, and it's kind of I wasn't able to watch all of it, but I recommend it, and I'm trying to get back to it myself. It's about the flat Earth map, the AE map. How do you say that? Azimuthal equidistant
projection.
The stuff we learned is amazing.
Right.
Anyway, the Gleason standard map. Anyway, he's talking about the southern flights, and so this, ties in with Antarctica too. So I highly recommend that. That's on Rob's channel, Rob Skiba. Did you get a chance to watch that one?
Yeah, I actually
you did.
And I do follow. Rob is one of the people that I try to keep up with some of his work.
Yeah.
I don't follow a lot of people at all, and I don't listen to a lot of other people's work at all, just because I'm so engrossed in doing my own. And I'm actually now working on a book. 3. One, the Thracian Chronicles, and a second, a book on the follow-up on Lucifer, Father of Cain, number 2, and also now working on a follow-up to the Flat Earth as key to decrypt the Book of Enoch, but it will focus on the firmament and the dome. And
nice.
Yeah, and other material like with what I'm talking about, the throne of God and the 3 heavens, and what's really located in up near the North Polar region, which is what we'll be going into later on today as well with the Inventio Fortunata Fortunata, which is the text that I'll be covering after, we do our discussion.
Nice compilation. On another subject that I wanted to bring to your attention, we discussed it on our roundtable last Tuesday on our show, The Time Is Now, but it was about the Hebrew meaning of the word NASA.
Right.
And that was the Strong's 5377 to deceive. Some others have pointed out that the word NASA, and it's pronounced na-sa, is Strong's 5375, and it has a meaning of to lift up. And Rob Skiba did a really nice article analyzing both of those terms and looking more in depth at NASA. And his article can be found at robschannel.com, and it's NASA-in-Hebrew. But I don't know, did you get a chance to look at that article, Zen?
No, I have not. And I actually did not even know that he had released that particular article. But just really quick, as far as the commentary on flatearthbible.com, I pulled it up, and it's fascinating. The guy did a really good job. So I look forward to, perusing through some of this information because, I don't, because I'm so busy with all my own material, I don't have a lot of time to look at a lot of other people's work. And so that's why I'm so very grateful for your collaboration in working with me and doing, making me aware of these other things, and also in, sharing the information with everybody else. So I'm very grateful to you for that, and keeping me in the loop with a lot of this other research. And so for that, much gratitude.
It can be overwhelming. I ran into him because there was a comment from Dave Weiss deep inside the rabbit hole. I don't even remember which video it was. I think it was on Tori's video, Bible Hub. And I asked, and I left a link, if they had seen the European Space Agency video of the lunar eclipse from just a couple weeks ago, where the moon had bounced around and, done a spin around the sun. It was really freaky. It did not look normal at all. And so he commented back to me that he was going to use that and really appreciate it. And I just wanted to mention that because it's nice to see the collaboration even in something like that in the comments. And I really did want to bring him out here. He's also on our list. And so, I look for suggestions from people, anything that we can do. I've got several blogs that I follow that are very in-depth research. I mean, there's so much information. A lot of it is kind of regurgitation of some of Eric Dubé's stuff, but it's really good. It's just kind of building a crescendo of the flat earth meme. But back to Rob's article real quick, I think you would have really appreciated this. The Strong's 5375 it first appears in Genesis 4:13, which is, and Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. And bear was the 5375. Rob finished that article. This is really great. I just want to read this. What's the point in bringing all of this up? The NASA to deceive and all that. Well, going back to the original meme that caught my attention, and given the fact that NASA has proven time and time again to be obsessed with the occult, Freemasonry, and other esoteric disciplines, and that they are being exposed more and more for the frauds they really are, I don't think it is just a coincidence that their acronym, NASA, just so happens to have a very interesting connection to one Hebrew word which, regardless of how it is pronounced, has the same numerical weight, and he's referring to gematria, as man and earth, and can have the meanings of to be lifted up and to greatly deceive. Man being lifted off the earth to greatly deceive? That's a great connection. Along the same lines, looking at the letter meanings in the chart above in his article, the Nun Shin Aleph can represent something like the activity of destroying God. And he finishes, this seems to be the sole purpose of NASA. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah, and for those that did not catch the show that we did, you can find it on blogtalkradio.com under Bro Ken, BRO space KEN, which is our brother Kenneth Beer's radio talk show, and where we do the round tables every other Tuesday. It seems that the schedule that we've settled down to, but in that show, I made a comment about how, that there's no real coincidences in that. It was my opinion that NASA picked that name and fixed the National Aeronautics, I even forget what the National Aeronautics Space Administration, to fit that, and the reason being is because of what Rob was talking about, to lift up and also to deceive, to beguile, and destroy God, and how all of those things fit in with their agenda and the alignment of what they are
at earthbible.com, and they have section videos and more on NASA. They have flat earth videos, Christian flat earth videos. And at the very beginning, it says new to flat earth, start here. So that's something you might want to check out. And
you said that's flatearthbible.com?
Yes, that's the name of it. And I've just started looking, but it's fascinating. It's going to be a great place to send friends to and to take a look at yourself. He's also got a list of some of the most popular YouTube channels. So for people who are new, and that's what I was saying, there's just so much that's going on. In the beginning, I'd go to Rob's channel and I'd look at your stuff. I got your book and I was so excited to be reading that. But you could type into YouTube and filter for a day the term flat earth, and you'd find a lot of really great stuff. Now it's just overwhelming. And I try and be a resource. I send out an email, and what I'm talking about today, most of it I sent out earlier today. If anybody wants the information we talk about here or would like to be on that list regularly, please email me at paralandra77@gmail.com. That's P as in Paul, ERELANDRA 77@gmail.com. One of the videos I sent out, it's from a new channel for me. This is Tori. He's in Canada, and his channel is called Flat Earth Hub. And he also has a website of the same name. This one is called NASA is Busted, and you can search that, Flat Earth NASA is Busted. It's fascinating. There's some very good footage from NASA. This is the Apollo 17 mission from 1972. That was the last moon mission where they landed on the moon. And that footage has a shot of the lunar module lifting off. I didn't know that they had that capability to, maybe it's that camera they left on the moon that is taking that. But it also shows a very odd frame of a shadow from the lunar module on the moon, which I'm not sure how that would have worked. And another thing that I had never seen before was a spacewalk that occurred on that flight as it was returning. So I don't remember seeing that, but it was all there. And there was some overheard "it's fake" comments in Houston. I guess it was Houston. So he got some very interesting things in that video. Cool. There's another NASA video. This is from Mediocre Monday. That's the name of the channel. Very good one. There's some past videos you might like. But this is 60 years of faking space. It's a very...
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are EFR, your protection from deception.
It's maddening how often the powers that be ruin Miracle Day, crisscrossing ocean skies in maze of garbled line. Unmarked craft streak delivery of toxic streams, tic-tacking pattern, always seemingly prior to advancing rain. What excuse can they justify the monetary cost of targeting metropolitan cities and dwarfing them in canopy of chemical haze? What purpose are they serving when one considers phenomena worldwide menace? Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed. And I thank you for taking the time to join Cathy and I as we go down the rabbit hole, investigating all things esoteric, trying to help you to decipher the illusion parading as reality. Today I've got some really interesting information from a long lost book. This will be kind of a follow-up on the show and the series that I've been doing on Paradise, the Throne of God, and the connections of the North Pole and surrounding area and region to what is the cradle of humanity. And so we'll go into some of that. But first, Cathy is going to be joining me here in the early segments to talk about some flat earth news and some interesting stories that she's located and the ongoing research of this as topic. Cathy, are you there, sister?
Yes, I am. Hi to everybody. Hi, Zen.
Hello, and I hope everything worked out well with your move and that you got settled in and that you were happy. And
well, the best part of that was it didn't happen, and that we were saved by my son, and so we did not move. Thank God.
Right on. Well, I'm just glad everything worked out for you and that things are good.
Yeah, thank you. This week there has been a lot. There always is. It's just a growing, vastly fast-growing community in Flat Earth. And I wanted to share something. I don't think you've heard about this one yet, Zen. It's a new page that is a Drudge Report style layout even, but it's videos and articles in a place that you can go to find information to share or to learn yourself. It's called Flat